Let's concur. I join in with Deputy Connaughton in commending what the Taoiseach and Minister for Finance are doing at the moment with regards to seeking to obtain a better bank deal than that which we have obtained to date. I would, however, also join in commending what the Taoiseach is doing, because a diplomatic initiative and a diplomatic offensive is clearly required to reverse or seek to renegotiate the deal which was agreed by the previous government with regard to the Anglo promissory notes. But turning back to the actual wording of the motion, and that is that that Dáil Éireann should assert that the debt is not the moral obligation of the Irish people. Well, I understand that Deputy Ross was perhaps the prime mover of this motion. Indeed, he moved it here tonight. Deputy Ross, I understand, worked in I think more than one stockbroking firm before taking his place in this House. Maybe he still does. But I suppose my question would be, well, what does morality have to do with the international markets? What did morality ever have to do with the international markets? I would completely, wholeheartedly agree that this bank debt, no more than the bank debt of the pillar banks, is not the moral obligation of the Irish people. But it is the legal obligation of the Irish people, and this sovereign state acts in accordance with its legal obligations. Yes, it was a mistake to give the bank guarantee on that fateful night, but I don't propose to lecture Deputy McGrath here tonight on the mistakes of the past, and I certainly hope that he won't be lecturing us on what this government hasn't achieved, given the enormity of the tasks that faced the government when it took office only 2 years ago. Because clearly, it is a legal obligation upon the Irish people to pay the bank debt in the form that it has been negotiated as, and that's the promissory notes. It might be morally repugnant, but it's a legal obligation. And until such time as that can be changed, and not unilaterally, because it was unilateral action that got us where we are today. It was a decision made in the middle of the night by, we are told, and of course we don't really know because there hasn't been a proper banking inquiry, but we're told by 4 men, maybe 6 men gathered in government buildings in the small hours of the morning to guarantee all the bank debt of all the banks in this country, including Anglo-Irish Bank, which is now the subject of this motion here tonight. The differences with Iceland are stark. I mean, in Iceland, the banks defaulted on their debt, and then they were nationalised. In Ireland, we nationalised the debt, and now we're talking about defaulting. Well, it's far too late for that now. That horse is bolted, not 2 years ago, but almost 5 years ago now. It's far too late for that, because we're not talking about the legal obligation of banks. We're talking about the legal obligation of this state now. Iceland also was speeded on its road to recovery by massively devaluing the kroner, which of course included a devaluation of both the savings of Icelandic people, but also the debts of Icelandic people. We don't have that option unless the proposers of the motion here would propose that we leave the euro. And if they do that, then I'd like to hear how they propose that we trade, given the level of trade that we have and our dependency, which is completely different to Iceland's, our dependency with Europe on trade.
1 minute remaining.
And of course, the other way that Iceland has got from the position of the huge hurdles that it faced to a surplus next year is it reduced the deficit. Yet every effort that this government has made to reduce the deficit to date, be it either by reducing spending, has been resisted by Deputy Halligan, for one, would be very opposed to any reduction in government spending. Deputy Ross would be very opposed to any increase in government taxation, because it would affect his constituents. I mean, we can all pander to our constituents, but the reality is that we have to reduce the deficit, regardless of what happens with these promissory notes, if this country is to have an economic future. So on that basis, I think that I couldn't possibly agree with the motion, although I would agree that the bank debt is not the moral obligation of the Irish people. But the rest of the motion, I'm afraid, is puff the magic dragon economics.